Welcome all to this final tutorial on the testing and final evaluation of your product design NEA. Now we are firmly in section F, which is analysing and evaluating, worth 20 marks, and it's 1 or 2 pages. That's all you need to do. Really important. Finish this. Let's look at the mark band. We are most looking at this middle column here. So for top marks, you need comprehensive testing of all aspects of your final prototype against your design brief and specification. Fully detailed and justified reference is made to any modifications proposed and undertaken. Another thing I draw your attention to is in the first band there, it talks about getting feedback from third parties. That's your client. And also, it should be ongoing analysis. So you can still pick up marks for section A by having client feedback throughout your project. If you haven't got that, go back and work it in. But let's focus on this middle section. What does that mean in plain English? So you've basically got to fully test your prototype against your design brief and specification, and then get feedback from your client and propose design improvements. That's basically it. Okay. Now, if you've just got a checklist, that's really useful. But if you say you've met everything, that's not brilliant. Okay. That tells me you haven't really thoroughly evaluated. You should be finding out criteria where you've failed to meet your specification, or maybe just partially met your specification. So hopefully you've not met. Hopefully you've met the majority of your design requirements, but you expect it to be detailed and critically where you haven't met or partially met your specification. So here's an example. You're going to review your design brief and your specification. Maybe you've got a point like this. It should have an attractive aesthetic, and my client has said it should have a neutral color like white or cream or whatever. Great. You've given yourself criteria early on in your project. However, when you come to review your product and get your client's thoughts on it, maybe the finish doesn't look as smart as you'd hoped. Therefore, you now have the opportunity to actually acknowledge that, and you will say something like this. Overall, the client thought the shape of the product was attractive. However, there were some gaps in the wood joints, blah, blah, blah. This left it looking unsightly. Okay, so the student there has identified one way they could improve it with a better finish. So there's an example. You look at your spec points, you look at your product with your client, and evaluate how well you've met each criteria. So here's an example of a page. If you want top marks, you could do it like this. I think it's a bit text heavy, but you get an idea. The first thing to obviously notice is there's actual evidence of testing. If you don't take it home, just get photographs of it in the workshop. But try and make it as real life as possible. So this was a knife holder. So what they've done is they've actually shown the knife holder in its open and closed position holding knives. And then there's a little summary of how it operated. You can pause this, by the way, and look at how well this student has written it up. So that's the first thing I'd have, photographs, images of how it works. You can summarize that as well. Next, get your client interview. Okay, this student has called it client opinions, final interview. And look at the very first question. The very first question at the top there is, what are your initial thoughts of the product? And then the next question is, how well do you think it operates? Do you think this is viable for using in the kitchen? Third question, what improvements can be made? These are excellent. And also look, the client's opinions are in red, and there's far more text about what the client has said than the questions. That's what a good interview looks like. There's also a section then on conclusion about the successes and how it could be improved. So that's a pretty good testing page. I'd give that high marks. In terms of evaluating, now don't be scared by the amount of text here. You don't have to write this much. The student has honestly written too much. But have a list of all your specification points. That's copied from section B. So you don't have to rewrite that. You can just copy and paste all your specification points there. For example, function, safety, cost, and so on. And then it's just evaluate how well you've met that point. Now you can do it in a wordy way like this student. So if I read that, evaluation, my product has satisfied this aspect of the specification as the furniture is hidden in a box which gives the appearance filled with knives, blah, blah, blah. However, it could be adapted. So they just put like a different color text how they'd modify it. I would give this high marks, but it doesn't have to be this heavy in writing. Okay, and you can see how they've color coded the improvements in a sort of browny color. All right, I'd also expect more images here. So, there's something to think about. Here's another example. Here, there's real life testing, clearly. They haven't written too much, that's fine. But it's great that they're taking it to the environment where the product would be used. Okay, the interviews, though, is a bit short. there's only 2 questions. I like the questions, but it is a bit short. So, what are your first impressions on this product? And the answer, really detailed response, it has to be said. And then the next question, do you believe there should be changes to improve this product? Again, that's a good question. Maybe that's all this student needed. That's fine. This student then followed on with their evaluation, where they've just copied the specification. That's absolutely fine. You can just copy your initial spec and then judgments. I think this would be better though if they had green and red, maybe color code it. What was good about it? What could be improved? This student's got sort of average marks, I would say. And then they've got design modifications. They've just copied in some images of other design features they could have added. That's a nice thing to do. What modifications would you put in there? Here's a really good example of getting everything on one page. So you can do it all on one page if you're clever. Again, pause it if you want to look up close, but notice clear evidence of testing. Nice. You don't have to put loads of images. This is the shoe rack is the product. Then they've color coded the summary of the testing. So obviously things are in green are strengths, things are in red are weaknesses, things that need to be improved there. They got a very simple client interview. Again, look at the question. Can you give me your initial impressions? How well do you think this meets your needs? That is an excellent question to get in there. And have a look at the last question. Do you have any suggested improvements? Again, get your client's thoughts. And then in between that, they've got questions about aesthetics, function, size. They've really dug into what the client thinks of this product. Okay, very important part. They've got color-coded evaluation against the specification. Here, they haven't bothered copied out the whole spec. They've just put the points themselves and then said met, part met, or not met. That's a very good way of quickly summarizing what are the key things you've actually met and then what you haven't, so that you can say how you'd improve it. What really makes this page stand out, if you want top marks, sketch what design improvement. Maybe that took 20 minutes, but it's going to be worth a lot of marks. So you could just summarize what further improvements you would make if you did it again. Excellent. All on one page. This is the example I would go with if I were you, some sort of format like that. So what do you need to do? Photographs or video of your product in real life. It could be done in the school workshop. You could take it home. It's up to you. Interview your client about your thoughts. Don't forget questions like, what do you think about this? Can I give me your impressions? Does it meet your needs? What kind of improvements would you suggest? That's the kind of questioning you should do. Evaluate against your specification points. Identify improvements and summarize them as further modifications. And then as an option, you can sketch or do a CAD drawing. Okay, like you saw in that last example. That's a really good thing to do. Here are some do's. Here are some don'ts. Okay, final thing I'm going to say, don't just say you've met every spec point, and don't be vague. Tell me specifically how you'd improve, and if possible, get a sketch in there. It's worth a lot. Best of luck, guys.